All right, everyone, and everyone online, thank you for being patient with us. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We are recording this, so I just want to start out with telling everybody thank you for being here. I know that it has been a long political season coming off of the 2024 cycle and then going right into primaries and now family times and then November, right? So there's been a lot going on. So what we're trying to do today is build power for our coalition. We do know, based off of 2021 and 2022 statistics, that 80% of the New Mexico poll population is in favor of a green amendment, right? But the problem is we've got to get it across the finish line with our legislators, and we have to build that coalition of power starting sooner. So what we decided, the New Mexico coalition that primarily runs the green amendment here in New Mexico, is to invite Maya out, the founders, talk a little bit about the new language and how to move about this legislative session. And then we'll entertain questions on Zoom and here in person to talk about what we're up against, how this works, how this benefits New Mexicans, and how in 2025, in a 60-day session with our incredible sponsors, we can get this passed. And so I would like to invite to the floor Maya Van Rossum.
No need to applaud. This is not that kind of event. It's not an applauding event. So anyway, I'm really, really happy to be back in New Mexico. It's really, truly one of my favorite places to come to. I actually had never been to New Mexico before the Green Amendment movement started. And I think the first time I came was in 2019, and I've been here multiple times every year since, working with all of you wonderful, wonderful people. Some faces I recognize, we've got some new faces, and that's awesome. So my charge really is going to be talking about the new language, right? One of the things that we have done with the New Mexico Green Amendment Coalition is we've heard the feedback from community members, from legislators, but also, just looking at what is happening in other states in terms of legal decisions to help inform how we can create the best, strongest Green Amendment language that is right for New Mexico. This is not cookie cutter. This is New Mexico's language. So I thought what I'm just going to start by doing is I want to read through quickly the new language with you, and then I want to highlight a few elements of it. So the language will read that the people of the state shall have a right to clean and healthy air, water, soil, and environments, healthy native flora, fauna, and ecosystems, and a safe climate, and to the preservation of the natural, cultural, scenic, and healthful qualities of the environment. The state shall protect these rights equitably for all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, tribal affiliation, gender, socioeconomics, or geography. The state, counties, and municipalities shall serve as trustees of the natural resources of New Mexico and shall conserve, protect, and maintain these resources for the benefit of all the people, including present and future generations. The provisions of this section are self-executing. Monetary damages shall not be awarded for a violation of this section. This section is enforceable against the state, counties, and municipalities. So you're actually going to recognize elements of this language from last year or previous years that have actually been brought back, right? We've really been learning, evolving, and
I'm just
sorry, Zoom is seeing something else.
Zoom is seeing something
Zoom
else.
is seeing something else, so we're trying to see what Zoom is seeing and fix it.
Okay, well, Zoom. All right. So
is that where you want to be?
Yes, that's where I want to be. So really just highlighting some of the important elements of a Green Amendment that we see in this language is the Bill of Rights placement. When you have a right that's placed in the Bill of Rights section of the state constitution, there's additional legal strength and protections that are brought to bear on those fundamental rights. There's something called strict scrutiny. The way a court looks at the right, the level of protection that's given to the right is higher if it's located in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution versus in some other section of the Constitution. This is where we place all the other human, civil, and political rights we hold dear. If we want our environmental rights to have that same quality of standing that same legal interpretation and protection that those other fundamental rights get, we want to have that Bill of Rights placement to ensure that that quality protection is given. It's not forwarding. That's right. Let me go somewhere else. We will get there. Don't worry. We are on it. I got it. I don't got it. I don't got it. Okay.
There we
yes.
go.
All right.
This wasn't the
So,
right tab.
right. So when it comes to the individual right of the people, you'll note that we have a little bit of an expanded list this year. We really heard from people. We wanted to include greater clarity on what were the individual rights that were being protected. So we see in the new language, water, air, soils, environment generally. But we also see healthy native flora, fauna, and ecosystems. This is fundamentally important. This was in an earlier iteration of the amendment. For a lot of reasons, it got pulled back and flora and fauna were covered more by the ecosystem and environmental language. But it was really important to our New Mexico partners that we expressly include flora and fauna. So you'll see that that language is back. And of course, we're expressly including the right to a safe climate, right? Addressing the climate crisis is very, very important to New Mexico and certainly important to the nation and the world. We don't want to have to convince a judge that climate is part of a healthy environment. So we don't want to have to convince a judge and run the risk that a judge won't agree with us. Let's just put the language right in there. Then there can't really be any debate. We have amongst the individual rights, the preservation of the natural, cultural, scenic, and healthful qualities of the environment. I just want to highlight when we talk about the cultural qualities of the environment, the intent here in New Mexico is really to talk about the connection, the importance of a healthy environment for the cultural values of the Native American people, the indigenous people of the state of New Mexico. So that cultural language, actually, it first started in the state of Washington, where also their Native American communities are such an important part of the state and the culture. But New Mexico was the second place where these cultural values were identified as having highest constitutional recognition in the proposed Green Amendment language. The healthful qualities of the environment, that's intended to focus us on human health, right? Because there are so many benefits that we get from human health. And of course, there's so many beautiful scenic vistas in the state of New Mexico. We have to include the scenic qualities of the environment, and the natural qualities of the environment really is just that human, the benefits of healthy nature. We have that explicit language that ensures that all government officials carrying forth these Green Amendment protections are protecting environmental rights equitably for all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, tribal affiliation, right, geography, generation. That's very important, and it's explicit. Again, we don't want to have to dicker with a judge about that. We want to be clear. If a community is being inequitably treated when it comes to environmental rights, we can have a constitutional question. The language is clear. All state, county, municipal government officials are constitutionally bound to protect these environmental rights and to protect these environmental rights equitably for all people. We identify the state as the trustee of the natural resources of the state with the duty to conserve, protect, and maintain the state's natural resources. Identifying the state explicitly as a trustee has real additional legal strength. It offers clarity as to the duties of government officials to ensure that they are protecting natural resources, again, equitably, but that they are protecting those resources for the benefit of the primary beneficiaries, who are the people of New Mexico. And we are very clear that the people includes future generations yet to be born, right? So that generational language is very important and has proven very valuable. The trustee language, identifying the people as the beneficiaries, including future generations, every single element of that proposed language has proven to be very powerful in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where we have this kind of trustee obligation and this kind of generational obligation. The generational obligation to, right, protecting natural resources for present and future generations. Often people try to say, oh, that's really just pretty language. No, we have court victories in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that prove when you have generational language, there is an obligation, a legal, meaningful, substantive, enforceable obligation to ensure the environmental rights of future generations are absolutely protected. Keep bouncing and going. And all right, there we go. So, and also now, by virtue of the Bill of Rights placement, by virtue of the language in the amendment, we know that this kind of constitutional language is enforceable. We know that it's self-executing, meaning it's enforceable whether or not you can find a piece of legislation that gives it definition in one particular context or another. But we wanted to be sure that no judge could disagree with us. And so it's stated right there in the language. And so here we go again. Here is the language, the new New Mexico Green Amendment language. For those on Zoom who didn't get a chance to see it, there you go. This is what we're proposing to advance in 2025. Now you're going to know, right? We know that in New Mexico, there already exists language in the miscellaneous section of the Constitution, Article 20, Section 21, which is being used very powerfully in the current Atencio case. It's powerful, it's important. We hope that case is victorious and brings additional clarity and strength to what it means to have this pollution control element in the New Mexico Constitution. But this language and the proposed Green Amendment language, it's important to recognize that they're complementary to one another, right? There is no tension between the two. Having a constitutional Green Amendment brings additional powers, additional protections to the people of New Mexico, to the natural resources of New Mexico, to future generations of the people of New Mexico. So it brings that additional clarity. In fact, it might also, once the amendment is passed, it might help lift up the obligations and offer clarity to the obligations under Article 20, Section 21 for the state to control pollution in order to protect natural resources of the state, because now it'll be very clear whether we're talking about this constitutional language or a piece of legislation in the state, that the language must be interpreted and applied through the lens of ensuring it protects the environmental rights of the people as articulated in the new New Mexico Green Amendment. So it'll offer partnership strength, but it may also offer additional clarity. We can see just on the face of the language that there is a difference in the orientation, right? Article 20, Section 21 is really about ensuring that government control pollution, control despoilment of the environment. That's valuable and important. But we know that there are many, many places, spaces, and circumstances where we have a lot of governmental regulation, whether it's legislation, regulation, or otherwise. And yet, we still have serious and significant problems with water contamination and air pollution and devastation of natural ecosystems and soils, right? And so we know that we have those problems either because, yes, there's a lot of regulation, yes, there's a lot of legislation, but perhaps it's not strong enough. But yet, governmental entities could say, see, we regulate it, right? We regulate it. But so we know that we might have a lot of regulation, we might still have a problem, either because the language is not good enough, the language is not being properly interpreted, or effectively or strongly interpreted, the language is not being fully and fairly enforced, right? Maybe we're just getting slapped on the wrist enforcement. And so as a result, we still have a serious and significant problem, even though government officials can say, yeah, we regulated it. We regulated it, we fulfilled our obligation. We, the people, can come back and say, yes, you regulated it, but you didn't protect the environmental rights of the people. You didn't ensure that you protected the natural resources to the standard recognized, required by the Green Amendment. And so we can fill those areas where we still have a problem. The Green Amendment can come in and help provide us essential protections. We also know that there are plenty of spaces and places where we have legislation and we have regulation, right? And it may look good, and in many places and spaces it may work very well, but there's always that community or those communities where those permits are getting issued And we have environmental sacrifice zones. We have communities that are being devastated because the way that legislation or regulation was interpreted or applied through that particular permit is resulting in serious and significant harm. Well, in those situations, we could have a constitutional problem. If we can show that there's inequitable protection of one community or another, again, the Constitution can be brought to bear, right? So we know that this additional protection that comes from the New Mexico Green Amendment, once passed, is going to be powerful, important, complementary to, and additive to existing Article 20, Section 21. And I also just want to highlight one of the things that, you know, the reason why I wanted to highlight it in the Green Amendment are these are elements that we don't explicitly see in Article 20, Section 21. That obligation for equitable protection, that obligation for generational protection, and explicit mention of the climate. So the Green Amendment will really help us when we have situations involving environmental sacrifice zones, involving the need to protect generationally. The Green Amendment language can be brought to bear to provide that additional necessary strength. Now, as I think all of you know, but if you don't, I'm going to tell you, New Mexico is a real leader in the National Green Amendments for the Generations movement. This movement started in 2014. Since 2014, we've had more and more states and communities learning about green amendments, coming on board, seeking to secure them, to pass them, to utilize them in their states. But New Mexico was early to the effort, and as a result, has a real leg up because of the quality of your language, but also the quality of the learning, the education, and the organizing that has been taking place in the state for the last several years. In fact, my very first green talk was right here in O'Neill's Pub for Indivisible, right? So that's great fun. So it's all coming full circle. But I want you to see, this is the Green Amendment map as it stands today. There are 3 states with green amendments: Pennsylvania, Montana, and the state of New York. And in those states, we're seeing, it's not an instant panacea, but we're seeing powerful and important victories that would not have been achieved but for the Green Amendment language. But we also have 17 states where language has been proposed. And we've got another nearly half a dozen states where people are getting organized and we're anticipating proposed language in the near future. But again, New Mexico has really been at the forefront of this movement and could, the way the Constitution is framed, could have a constitution on the ballot as soon as next November, not November 2024, but November 2025, if we can really get together, get this through the legislature and get it on the ballot before the people. So nmgreenamendment.org is the website for the New Mexico Green Amendment effort. And if you want to learn more, get involved. I hope you will go there. We have a petition, we have information. We have information at the back of the room, but this is really a great place and space to go to learn the basics and learn how you can get involved. And with that, you want me to go right to the, okay. So with that,
Stop
we
sharing.
have,
Stop sharing.
yes, stop sharing, thank you. We have with us 3 in person and 1 online, 4 of our legislative champions for the New Mexico Green Amendment. We want to give our legislative champions an opportunity to share with you why they think this is so important and how hard they are going to work to help make this happen for the people in New Mexico. So I'm going to call for Senator Pope to share with us why he is taking such a leadership role.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm sure there's other things you can be doing tonight. So thank you for being here. You know, for me, this is easy to get behind. You know, ensuring that anyone, no matter regardless of their race, their religion, if they're a tribal member, whether they are rich or poor, no matter what part of the state that they live in, that they are protected. And I would say most of all that myself as an elected official, we're really held accountable. And we really have something that guides us to do the right thing when it comes to our environment. I think if you ask anybody, nobody would be against clean water. Nobody would be against clean air. Nobody would be against an environment that is free from contaminants and waste that are gonna harm people, especially in the future. I think for so long, New Mexico has been a sacrifice in many cases. And in many cases, that sacrifice has impacted people of color and members of BIPOC. And it's not right, it's not fair. And so for me, we need to have a green amendment to hold us accountable. You're not gonna hear that a lot. You know, an elected official that says, hold me accountable. But, you know, my other colleagues that are on this, that is what we believe. We want to do the right thing. Not only for the people that are here today that could be harmed, but the future, because we've seen in our state what that long-term harm has done to our communities. And so we have a huge chance to change that, to make sure it doesn't continue to happen. It doesn't happen again. So to get this done, you know, I'm not gonna, you know, Maya laid out what this bill is and what it does and the language. I tell my colleagues all the time, I'm not an attorney, I just dress better than most of them. But I just feel that this is the right thing and what we really need to do, but we're gonna need community support to do this. We're gonna need other members of the Senate and House to get this through, which means you're gonna have to talk with your legislator, get them behind it as well to make this happen. I'm gonna be frank right now. There's gonna be people that are gonna be pushing against us. A lot of special interest and industries don't want this to happen because we're gonna have to hold them accountable. But what's the cost? Their short-term money and profits in the short term. It's not worth harming our people. And also the cost on the back end to clean this up and the healthcare from the harm that it causes. So I just think people really need to really understand that. So I'll quit talking. You don't want to get an elected official on mic for too long. And with that, I want to go ahead and pass it on to Representative Ferrari. Give her a chance to talk.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, being part of the Green Amendment has really been an honor, and thank you all for all of your efforts. This is so important that we be able to build our support, because when it comes to different committees, we know who our stumbling blocks are and how, you know, we go around them to make sure that we can, you know, get this through. Because our state needs it. We have so many people. I mean, just think if we'd have had the Green Amendment back when they were making decisions where it was affecting our uranium mining workers and the people who were downwind of the Trinity site. Things would have been a lot different where we would have been able to hold it accountable. Of course, it was federal, but you know, at the state level, they would have been involved too. Making sure that people knew what was going to happen and be able to evacuate in a timely manner. But we have those same things happening now. Is there anyone here from Valencia? Well, the Valencia County Commission, I think it was Valencia County Commission, they approved because the business wanted to use more water. They were already using more water than they should have. City of Los Lunas. Oh, okay, thank you. I knew I was close. And so they went ahead and approved with using 1916 data about how much water was in the aquifer, which was a lot different than what it is now. And so the people there organized. But if we'd had a green amendment, even just in the past few years, we would be able to have them, you know, account for future generations, how this was going to affect and deplete a lot of the wells that are there now for farming, for ranching, and for households. So, you know, we need right now to have the Green Amendment approved for protections that are happening now. And other expansions of plutonium mining going on up north that they want to expand. These are things that we need them to consider what it's doing to our environment and to the people of those areas. I'm fighting right now as committee chair of in the interim. We have hazardous materials committee, and Senator Cedillo Lopez and Senator Poe are both on it too. And you're not Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, you're. Yeah.
Thank you.
Adjunct member. So we're, looking, well, there's, what they're talking about venting off some of the, plutonium storage that's happening in, Los Alamos Labs. That can happen at any time because they aren't going to let people know. So we're demanding that they protect, especially pregnant women and, people who are, easily affected by the air pollution. In that area before that happens, and then for them to look and see whether they really need to do that or not. And then also to protect it from this exploding into the atmosphere at any time. So these are things that we need a green amendment right now for. And I really appreciate all of your help helping to put that pressure on candidates who are running to consider, running, supporting the green amendment. That's going to help us a lot to get this through. Mike and Maya to be here is wonderful. Thank you, and for all of your work here, we appreciate it. So I would like to introduce Senator Cedillo Lopez, who I think I was just happened to be in your office, and you introduced me to the Green Amendment, and I think that might have been when your daughter was here, Maya. And we reeled you in. Yeah, it was so wonderful, such captain chance, and I really appreciate it. So thank you. Can you see me? Okay, and I'm just hold it away. Okay.
Thank you. As you know, I'm Anthony Cedillo Lopez, and I want to tell you a little bit of a history lesson. When I first joined the Senate in 2019, so it's recent history, I introduced a pause on fracking. And the reason was we had come off the years of the Martinez administration in which it was anything goes with the environment. The environmental department was at the lowest funding it had ever been in the last 30 years. It was ridiculous. There was no research on what they were doing with the water. What were they doing with the water? And there was no research on what was in that water. There was no research, nothing. The state knew nothing about what was going on. So I introduced a pause on fracking. Now, you might have noticed I didn't introduce it last year. And the reason is the Lujan Grisham administration has actually done some stuff with regulations. They have done incredible stuff, produced water regulations, transportation of produced water regulations, the emissions rules or the methane emissions rules. So they've actually done things that Martinez didn't basically do anything. But what Martinez did do, and this is the history part, during the Richardson administration, pre-Martinez, he spent 8 years painstakingly passing environmental regulations and climate change regulations. Governor Martinez undid those within 10 months. Within 10 months, all 8 years of work was down the drain. One of the reasons that I support the Green Amendment so strongly is because to undo regulations that protect the environment, once this is passed, will require an analysis of what undoing the regulation will do to our environment. And so the new governor has horrible, because we have a history of electing horrible governors. I don't know why. I hope that we keep on this blue wave that we've been riding for a while. But someday, maybe it's in future generations of our children, we might elect a bad governor again. And I don't want that governor overturning what this governor has done within 10 months. I want a governor that's going to build on what they've done. And I want a legislature that is going to take these regulations that have been passed and turn them into statutes. And I want a constitutional amendment in our state in the Bill of Rights to ensure that our people have the right to clean air, land, and water. We deserve it. Thank you.
All right, everybody, thank you for the patience. Representative Lujan, if you want to put whatever words you have in the chat, we tried to unmute you, but we were unable to unmute you. And that is all of our legislators, but now we're gonna have some Q&A. And I just wanted real quick before we start the Q&A, both online and in person, there are door hangers in the back. And I know like the knee-jerk reaction is to just take one, take several, give them to people who are interested in a green amendment. Take any of the literature if you want to take extra. This is how we build a coalition, is by letting people have the education that they need in order to get it passed. So here is our list from Green Latinos.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. My name is Carlos Majucas. I am the New Mexico Community Advocate for Green Latinos. I would like to invite those of us who have come in person to come up to the microphone. If you have any questions for our representatives in our legislature, or to ask Maya any questions, or if you have any comments, we do ask that you keep your comments or questions fairly brief. After we've gone through any questions or comments we have here in person, we will go to Zoom and answer any questions or comments on there. So if we have anybody here in person that would like to come up, you're right here.
I'm right here. I have a comment for our legislators and a question. So one of the things that I've noticed in the legislative work that we've been doing at Indivisible and Reboot Our Democracy is that we do pass fantastic laws. What we don't pass is enough budget to implement them and protect them and enforce them. And I've heard a whole lot of stories. So just want to point that out to the Green Amendment supporters. Until we get some adequate budgets to pay inspectors comparable salaries to what their peers make in the private sector. And until we're able to actually use that budget to provide enforcement, all the great laws in the world don't matter. At least to me. Yes, love to have you. Thank you.
Just the other night, I was in a meeting that
Fog.
Oh, I forgot the acronym, but it's a group that is trying to get more transparency in government and also the budget process. I didn't realize we're the only state in the nation that has an executive budget and a legislative budget. And the two have to be merged, which we know about, but I think that might be a key to what holds our state back. And especially when executive, we're in committees during the interim and listening to different agencies and the good things that they're doing, but we want them to do more. So we're always saying, how much budget do you need and how do we get that? And so I think a lot of times the governor holds back a lot of the agencies. And then we go along and maybe add a few dollars more, but not always enough. And so I think that's something that we need to think about. And Chair of the House Appropriations, Representative Small, was at this meeting and he was explaining that. And I'm like, alarms going off, like, this is not enough. This is not right. And he's talking about how we're building billions of reserve when oil and gas is going to be here for a long time, but we don't have the money going into regulation and for all of the different things and the different agencies that need that.
Tell us how a bunch of activists can help you, because we're ready.
Yeah, I think you should go with this. This is really important because what I've seen is that the budget often has appropriations with no law behind it.
Right.
And there were laws with no money behind
No
it.
budget behind
And
it.
my very first term, I think it was the first bill I passed, was the Water Data Act,
Mhm.
which was great, but there was no
No money.
money. And so little junior money we put in and just whatever. Now it's finally in the budget. But that's an example of hobbling along with a law with no money
And that took 5
So-
years
to get
to get the budget.
to get into the budget, yeah.
Yeah,
to
5
get into the
years.
budget. Right,
And how long
And
did it take
so-
to get the bill? You know,
first time.
I do have another question if I'm allowed.
Yeah.
You're the moderator.
Okay, don't go too far. You might need to stay up here to answer this one. So the Center for Biological Diversity, Wild Earth Guardians, and several frontline Native American communities have recently, they filed a lawsuit using the existing constitutional amendment from 1972, 73, whatever it is. And they were, now they're going to be allowed to go to trial about this. So we've had legislators come to meetings in this room say there's no need for a green amendment because there's already lawsuits. Everybody's afraid of the state being sued. The state is already being sued. So how would the green amendment change this?
So that's really why I tried to highlight the differences between Article 20, Section 21 and the proposed Green Amendment language and how the Green Amendment language is additive. And I did mention, that's one of the reasons why I mentioned the Atencio lawsuit, right? It's an important lawsuit and they're utilizing this language in context, in the oil and gas context, seeking to get a court determination that it has meaning, power, and strength. Whatever the outcome of that litigation, as I indicated, there are many, many ways that the Green Amendment language is going to be powerful and important and additive. It is not displacing, replacing, or repeating what we have in Article 20, Section 21. It is strengthening it and it's adding additional protections, additional elements. It's not Article 20, Section 21 is about pollution control, right? And despoilment control. The Green Amendment is about the people's right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment. The duty of the state to protect natural resources generationally and equitably. So it's a different orientation that's going to provide additional needed and essential protections. What we see, and I don't want to speak any more about the Atencio case because I think it's really important when you've got good lawyers and good plaintiffs going forth, bringing forth a strong and important legal action and making their arguments, that they get to make their arguments and we don't have other people out here pontificating, right? That's what the court system is for. So we'll see what the outcome is, but whatever the outcome, the Green Amendment is going to be powerful and important. I do want to say to you that the values of having a Green Amendment, the primary value that we are seeking is to get our government officials to better protect the environment, respect and protect the human right of all people to a clean, safe, and healthy environment, including a safe climate in the first instance. Let them do it better so we're all better protected and we don't have to litigate over things like oil and gas being allowed to despoil the environment. But a Green Amendment will allow the people to hold government officials accountable when necessary. What we see in other states, and at some point we'll go through a training, we'll go through the kinds of cases that we see. But the number of cases we see in the 3 states that have a Green Amendment, less than 10 a year. It is not an onslaught of litigation. Lawyers and communities use the amendment responsibly when it's passed. And the other thing is, we also see that the amendment is not just used by individuals and organizations, but we actually see government officials relying on the amendment in the courtroom and out of the courtroom, but also in the courtroom to help strengthen their abilities to better protect the environment in a variety of contexts. So it's powerful, it's important, it's additive, and it's not going to result in an onslaught of litigation.
Thank you, Maya. We can do one more question live. We're gonna keep it a little bit short because we just have about 5 minutes. We have a couple of Zoom questions.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you legislators that we've been watching you work on this for so long, and we are darn sick of waiting another legislative session to get this thing passed. So one of the questions that I have is this: the governor calls special sessions to get her prize legislation passed. Where's the governor been in all this? I mean, why isn't the governor saying we need this green amendment? I mean, do we have any influence over her? My goodness, I'm a little bit, proving that I don't see our head executive officer doing a damn thing about this. That's number one. Number two is, and I thought I'd like your opinion on that. Number two is, during this interim session, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to show up at interim committees? And number three is, has anybody in the legislature changed his or her mind since this thing started? I'm sick of seeing the same people all the time. What is preventing us from getting these other legislators on board? Thank you.
Woo-hoo, go hear it.
Thank you. I think we will probably bypass opinions on the governor.
Oh, I was gonna. Oh, yes, go ahead.
We just have a few minutes.
You know, answer people's questions about the substance of the amendment and the strategy.
Thank you, Senator.
Well, I was gonna say, I think you need to talk to her. When I asked her to endorse the Green Amendment, I didn't get a response from her, but I got a response from the staff because she doesn't sign this. She doesn't have an opportunity to veto it or whatever. Once the legislature passes it, it goes directly to you, the voters. And so what the staff member said is she doesn't take a position on things she has no control over. So that was what was said. So whatever, you know, I'll just say that. And then when you look at legislators who are against the Green Amendment, I encourage you to look at their campaign finance statements and notice where they got the money. And I think that will tell you a lot.
So I'd like to go ahead and ask one question. We are very short on time, but this is from Zoom. The question is, could it be that rather than eliminate all flora, fauna not native, that these species may be the only ones who have adapted and may survive the climate upheaval? Answer that, Renee?
I'm just gonna say, so this is gonna be a scientific question, and certainly the science is gonna evolve and ecology is going to evolve, and that is an important question. But respecting and protecting and doing what we can to protect the native flora and fauna, the native ecosystems is essential and important. And in the climate context, it becomes one of the reasons for government officials to better battle against the climate crisis.
Thank you very much. We're going to have one more question from Zoom. This question is from Terry Sloan. How do we stop the oil and gas destruction legacy, the uranium legacy, and the need to look at San Juan, the Permian Basin mess that is here now? We need to ask that of our current Article 20, Section 21. It is not working. Senator Pope, do you have any opinions on that?
That is a very good question. But I think, Mr. Sloan, and I know you, Terry, this is really the point of why we need a green amendment. You know, I think in the courts, we're going to be dealing with what has already happened. I don't want to deal with what's going on with the current lawsuit, right? But this is really a preventive measure, what we're talking about here. We're hoping that we don't do any harm in the future, and we're holding elected officials accountable so that we don't make decisions that cause what's been going on in the Four Corners, what's going on in southeast New Mexico, right? So that's my hope, and why I think you made the argument of why we need the green amendment. So that's my response.
Thank you very much, Senator Pope. Is everybody okay if we hang on for just a few more minutes to do one last question off of Zoom? Is everybody okay with that? Thank you. So this question from Sam Williams. Do we have data from the states that have a green amendment that disputes the fears that this amendment will lead to lengthy permitting, frivolous lawsuits, and greater unemployment? Maya, I think this is right up your alley.
So first, as I said, the number of lawsuits in a given year is 3 to 10. New York's Green Amendment has been in place for about 2.5 years. And it's on track to be 3 to 10. So we don't see an onslaught of litigation. 0 lawsuits have been dismissed as frivolous. They're all about serious issues of significant and meaningful concern. Whether or not they win or lose is not the point. But the concerns that are being brought forth by community members and by local government officials and state officials relying on the Green Amendment are all powerful and important. We actually, at Green Amendments for the Generations, we're actually having an economic analysis being undertaken right now to demonstrate the point that there has been no economic downturn, no economic harm, no job harm in the 3 states that have Green Amendments. But just anecdotally, you can look at Pennsylvania, you can look at Montana, and you can look at the state of New York. There are plenty of jobs, there's lots of economic growth, and we have healthy, happy communities economically that are really benefiting from having a constitutional Green Amendment in place when they need it to protect their health, their safety, and to protect themselves from the economic harms that environmental desecration and devastation actually inflicts on people, on our lives, and on our economies.
And there's another question that's in Zoom from Karen, and Karen, we can't, so this is the Green Amendments for the Generation, the coalition. And when we ask questions that are specifically about candidates or redistricting or voting, we get into a really thin line because that's political and that puts our 501c3 at risk. And so that being said, you're asking a question about redistricting and who's winning in redistricting and whether this is good or bad. And I think Representative Ferrari hit on this a little bit, that we really need to be asking those tough questions. And we have some folks from the Environmental Justice Caucus in the room right now. And I know that if you go through the Environmental Justice Caucus, which is a statewide organization, one of their primary things is if you want to be endorsed or speak or come and talk at their caucus, you have to back the Green Amendment. So Karen, my recommendation to you would be to contact Athena or Alex or Muriel and get in that caucus because they're asking those questions. Adelante, the Adelante Progressive Caucus as well. We do endorsements. We make sure that we're asking those questions. There's legislative town halls, legislative wrap-ups. Those are the most important times to catch your current candidate or potential candidates and say the question, right? There's somebody who just recently won who openly at Adelante and Environmental Justice said she's not for the Green Amendment, right? And we can say in this room that we understand a little bit of like the reasoning behind that. Labor is a really hard push. There's this misconception with the labor organizers that if we passed the Green Amendment, this would hurt jobs, right? But we know there's solar and wind jobs out there. And we know if we went to the frontline workers who work in the oil industry, if there was a job that was safer for them to do, that was healthier for their environment, their family, and paid just as much, they would easily transfer over. And there's an additional conflict that the labor heads are not necessarily asking labor workers what their stances are on these pieces of policy. Rather, they are determining for labor. We have labor in the back here, and he would say that he absolutely is for a Green Amendment, right? Colton Dean, he's with 2 different labor organizations and the chair of Adelante, right? And so there's this misconception. So that's where we really have to dive in and talk to our legislators about what our goals are and what we want. But I would highly recommend those 2 caucuses to answer that specific question for you. And I'm sorry we couldn't answer it here. And with that said, I want to thank all of the representatives. I want to thank Maya. And most of all, I want to thank everybody who joined in on Zoom, everybody who's watching this later on, and everybody who's in this room right now, because this is how we build power, right? And so on that, make sure you grab extra literature in the back, pass it off to a friend, and please, 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 there's boxes back here, take some food. Usually I pack all this up and I take it to Colton, or I donate to wherever he's working, because he's usually working at the or somewhere like that. But if you guys know anyone that we can donate this food to or take it home, we don't want anything to go to waste. And thank you so much, Maya. Thank you so much with all the legislators for being here today. Thank you.
Just one final push, right? With Green Amendments for the Generations, the New Mexico Green Amendment Coalition is a nonprofit 501c3 effort. So we need your membership, we need your support. That dollars are always valued and valuable, but that's not what we're asking for. We're asking for you to sign up, join, and get involved. There's a new Green Amendment Action Platform. The first moment there's hot news from any state, that's where it gets posted. So when things get hot in the state of New Mexico, when you want to know where you need to be, who you need to speak to, if there's going to be a hearing, if the hearing has suddenly changed, it's on, it's off, it's changed the room, whatever. If you're on the action platform, you're going to get that information first. So there is a way to sign up for that in a card in the back and also at nmgreenamendment.org. And I really want to thank Nicole because she did most of the heavy lifting for this evening. So thank you, Nicole. I want to thank Ray Ellen for donating her time to make sure all our tech worked.
It's sort of.